The headlines that you just saw on the screen have just one thing in common. The perpetrators all claimed membership or association with the Black Hebrew Israelites. But what is it about the Hebrew Israelites that makes violence follow the group wherever it goes? Well, by the end of this video, you'll understand the history of this cult and why it has become so dangerous to be a part of it. How the group was founded. While the name Black Israelites is relatively recent, only coming into popularity in the late 1960s and 70s, the idea that Black people were Jews is actually quite old. So the first wave of the Black Hebrew Israelites came out of something that was known as the holiness movement way back in the 1890s. And essentially, the Black people in these groups took Judaism from the Hebrew Bible and decided to interpret it quite literally. So when there were references to events or phenomenons such as slavery, the Hebrew Israelites actually decided to interpret that on a literal basis and apply it to Black people in America. There's also a strong connection between the Hebrew Israelite development and the push for freedom of Black people in America. For example, during the Harlem Renaissance, there was a second wave in the movement, and it really focused around those who were following Marcus Garvey, who was the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. And this particular manifestation of the group followed mainstream Judaism. Now, the movement really caught fire when the man that you see before you, Ben Ammi Ben Israel, a high school dropout and former foundry worker, said that he had received a vision from the angel Gabriel in 1966. Now, this vision told him that Black people were the true Hebrew Israelites and that it was time for them to return to the Promised Land after being enslaved as punishment by God. So let that sink in. Here you have an ideology that is based on, number one, believing that slavery was okay, was a form of punishment, and was deserved by Black Americans. Now, initially, because of the roots of the movement being tied to Black liberation and the Back to Africa movements, Ben Ammi took his followers to Liberia, West Africa. So initially, Israel was not even on the radar. It was essentially a Back to Africa movement that was founded with religious tenets. So Ben Ammi and his followers moved to Liberia, and they found that the African country was not to their liking. They found that it was very harsh to live there, the conditions were less than ideal, and they certainly did not fit in with the folks that were already there. So after listening to the final speech of Dr. Martin Luther King, where he said that he had been to the Promised Land and he had seen the Promised Land, Ben Ammi had a new vision. The new Promised Land was in fact Israel. Not Liberia, not West Africa, not what he initially says the angel told him, but it was in fact the more developed country of Israel. Now, by all accounts, Ben Ammi has led the most successful and some would say moderate version of the Hebrew Israelite group. Well, since his passing several years ago, we've seen the group become more extreme. And let's talk about what those beliefs are. For starters, there is no one Hebrew Israelite group. The group has splintered into different factions and different sects. Many of the groups are very far away from the original ideology that even Ben Ammi held, and have since gone on to bring in new beliefs. So, what do Hebrew Israelites believe? Well, for starters, they believe that Black Americans belong to one of the 12 tribes of Israel. They think that the current Jews are imposters and often say that the ish in Jewish proves that it refers to them being like Jews and not actual Jews. They also believe that slavery was a divine punishment, that white people will be enslaved by them, and let's not forget polygamy, because of course they like to have multiple wives and women. Now, these are pretty strong beliefs, and the most astonishing part about all this is that they have absolutely no facts, archaeological evidence, or proof to back any of this up. Essentially, the Hebrew Israelites will take one or two Bible verses that mention something about dark skin or burned skin or woolly hair, and then they will use that to construct an entire philosophy, an entire religion around Black American people being Jews. And the issue here is that they repeat it over and over again. I'm sure you've seen them standing on the street corners yelling. And what do? They read the same verse 5, 10 times because repetition actually makes it more believable according to the thought process of the Hebrew Israelites. So what makes this group particularly dangerous? Well, for starters, they have made the hate list of organizations around the United States and are actively being watched by the United States government for signs of domestic terror. So essentially, if you decide to link yourself with this group, you can consider yourself as one who is being watched. Another reason that this group is so dangerous is that deportation orders have already begun in Israel. So you can expect to see more of the group that went to Israel returning to America, possibly with a chip on their shoulder and something to prove, especially as they battle for supremacy among other Hebrew Israelite factions. And last but not least, the abuse of women and children seems to be rampant and regularly accepted among the Black Hebrew Israelites. The issue with women is that once you get in, it is very difficult, nearly impossible for you to get out. We have seen reports of women who have tried to leave the Black Hebrew Israelites group and have lost their lives as a result. So the issue comes in where you may think this is a religious group, but this is so much deeper than religion. This is a group where men who have been weakened by their plight in the United States have a newfound sense of power, and it is being abused, mostly taken out on women and children. It is time for every Black American to reject the Black Hebrew Israelites' doctrine and their being among us. It has been harmful to our community and has hurt women, men, and children. Thank you so much for watching.